For the past week, one Supreme Court ruling has been at the center of all nationwide conversations. We've been talking about the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Everyone's mentioned it. But you might have missed some of the other big rulings that the Supreme Court has also weighed in on. Gun restrictions, greenhouse emissions, Miranda rights, and a win from some North Carolina lawmakers. In fact, the Supreme Court has ruled on 62 cases this term. We're going to dig into all the ways they've impacted your life this year, starting with the most recent ruling where the court sided with a football coach who wants to pray with his players after games. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of a former high school football coach who sued his Washington State school district, claiming it violated his constitutional rights when it told him to stop praying with students midfield after games.
I think it's a great ruling for America.
Writing the 6-3 majority opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch stated, "The Constitution and the best of our traditions counsel mutual respect and tolerance, not censorship and suppression, for religious and non-religious views alike."
People of faith or no faith, everybody has the same rights, and that's what the Constitution is all about.
The ruling also said the coach's prayer on the field was a private moment of reflection that students joined in on, different than what most people think of as prayer in school, according to Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson.
The idea that the students willingly joined him, I think, was different from, let's say, you start a school day with your teacher saying, and now before we get to geography, let's have a moment where we all pray. That was different from, I think, what the court would say. Maybe this is more analogous to a teacher on a break. Students see that teacher praying, decide of their own volition that they want to join.
In her dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said there were pressures on students to join in the prayer, and she suggests the ruling further blurs the line between church and state, writing that it sets us further down a perilous path and forcing states to entangle themselves with religion, with all of our rights hanging in the balance.
She used the words, the pendulum swinging back. It's exactly right. It's this court saying, we're worried about not protecting people enough under part of the First Amendment, the free exercise clause, the free speech clause. We're worried that we've done that because we've cared too much, basically, about the establishment clause, the idea that the government shouldn't favor religion over non-religion, one religion over another.
The Supreme Court also just struck down a New York gun law that had been in effect for more than a century. It ruled New York could not limit who in their state could get a concealed carry permit. Justice Thomas wrote that majority opinion. He says the right to bear arms is not a second-class right. Since it's in the Bill of Rights, it's fundamental to our country. And that gives the court the power to use the 14th Amendment to enforce it.
The Supreme Court said that the Bill of Rights that are fundamental to our history and tradition, the ordered justice of our country, also apply to limit the states. So what happened in the Second Amendment decision recently, it was about New York. It didn't limit New York directly. It limited New York through the 14th Amendment due process clause.
Justice Breyer wrote the dissenting opinion. He says the decision makes it harder for states to pass laws limiting the amount of guns on the streets. He says the ruling does not violate the Second Amendment because states have a right to regulate firearms. Almost every state allows legal gun owners to carry concealed weapons in public, including North Carolina. About half of states don't require a permit at all. Very few states, like New York, ask gun owners to prove they had a special need to protect themselves. The Supreme Court also made a key ruling in the battle over voter ID right here in North Carolina. The court ruled that the leaders of the General Assembly can intervene in a federal lawsuit involving the law. Democratic Attorney General Josh Stein challenged the voter ID law in federal court and on states' behalf. That's what his office does, represents North Carolina how he sees fit. But Republicans wanted their own representation. The Supreme Court ruling allows them to do so. The voter ID law is not currently in effect, and the 3-year dispute over whether it stays or goes is not over. Another major ruling that got quickly overshadowed by Roe v. Wade has to do with something we all know by heart from watching those crime shows on TV, the Miranda rights. Say them with me now. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. In that speech, it's the one that you hear every time after someone is arrested. Well, the court ruled if a police officer fails to read you your rights, you cannot sue the officer. They should still be read, but there's no punishment for officers if they don't read them. Police unions celebrated this ruling, saying it helps protect officers from undue prosecution. But the director for the Center of Civil Rights at UNC School of Law says that's a big undercut of something designed to protect the innocent. He worries the lack of punishment might change police culture.
It's very easy for the police to put real pressure on somebody to make a statement and sign a statement and not to fall back on their Fifth Amendment rights, on their rights to remain silent, etc. So it's an important case.
He also says it's another sign that the court is ready to chip away at long upheld rulings in parts of our culture and criminal justice system.
Because there will be more. The one thing we can see with respect to this conservative court, which is going after a lot of jurisprudence it doesn't like, there's more to come. To quote a famous Hollywood line, buckle your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
The Supreme Court still has some big things left to rule on this week before wrapping up. 2 separate vaccine mandate cases will get settled, a dispute between West Virginia and the EPA over greenhouse gases, and a border battle between the Biden administration and the state of Texas. President Biden wants to end a Trump-era policy that forced migrants from certain places to remain in Mexico until their immigration hearing. Civil rights groups who want the rule to end say it jeopardizes the safety of migrants.
It doesn't give an appropriate way for asylum seekers to be able to seek refugee status in the United States. And in addition to that, it returns individuals under the MPP to Mexico, which in itself can put them in a pretty dangerous situation.
She says the country needs a better way to process asylum seekers. The state of Texas says, wait a second, overturning the policy will overwhelm border agents.
We're having to manage hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border every month. What that means is those border agents are not protecting the borders the way they would against the importation of drugs. We know that the Trump administration successfully implemented this program.
2 separate cases deal with the president's vaccine mandates. One questions whether the government can force healthcare workers at federally funded locations to get vaccinated. The other challenges an OSHA rule that mandates companies with more than 100 workers implement a policy forcing people to get vaccinated or wear a mask and take a weekly COVID test. Now, the last big ruling we expect this week challenges if the EPA has got the authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. A Trump-era law set emission guidelines for states with coal power plants. Several states and mining companies joined together to sue the EPA. The court will decide if the government can implement rules like this one. Most of the time, it is easy to forget about the Supreme Court. It's not as entrenched in the day-to-day happenings of Washington, D.C., but this past week has shown us that it has a major impact on what the rules of our country look like and your life. With each important ruling, we'll be here to dig into it. WFMY News 2 at 6 is next.